Hi there, this is part 2 of building the How It Works section. And this is what we're going to format in this lecture. So let's start with these two step boxes and of course make this image here smaller. Okay, so right back to the CSS file. Let me grab a copy of this and how it works. So I'll start with the steps box because, as you remember, those are the two boxes, the left one and the right one. Okay, so let's first put a margin between them and the H2 title. So margin top of, let's say, 30 pixels. And now we need to select each of the boxes individually. And in order to do that, I will show you a new, very useful selector. And it's this one. It's actually a zero class, and it's this one, first child. So this will select the first of the step boxes, which is in our case the left one. And there's also a similar one, which is the last child. So these are two very useful zero classes, and actually in the course ebook you can find a link to an article which has, I think, 30 very useful selectors such as this one. Alright, so in the first box we want the text aligned to be to the right side. Now you may ask, we don't have any text there, and that's actually right. But the text align property doesn't work only for text. It actually does work for all inline or inline block elements, and the image is one of those inline block elements, and so it will then be aligned to the right side of this box. And I also want to add a padding to the right side of 3%. And now you maybe feel a little confused why I'm adding this padding with a percentage instead of adding pixels. And there's a simple reason for that, and it has to do with responsive web design, where we want our layout to be fluid. And as I explained to you before, fluid means that we have all our layout properties defined in percentages instead of rigid pixels. So let's do the same thing with the other box, and here we will say that we want a padding to the left side of 3% as well. And now let's check what else we have. So the image, I want the image, and it's called app screen. So we already have a class name here. So let's say app screen, and let's say width of let's say 40%. And again, I'm defining the width with a percentage of the box. So let's see what it looks like now. Alright, this looks quite good, right? So you have a nice distance between the image and the text, and I think the image size is okay now. So the next thing is we want to format those numbers here. As you remember, we want this to be a circle with a number inside of this circle. And we also want some distance, some space, of course, between each of these work steps elements. So let's start doing this. Works step and margin to the bottom, I would say 50 pixels. And again, let's check our HTML file. So we want to select the div element inside of a work steps, because that will be our number. So works step div. And what are we going to do? First, let's set its color to orange. And we already know where that is. It's up here. Then we also want a border, and I will use 2 pixels here, such as in other elements on a website, so to keep some consistency here, and here with the same color as well. And I want to display it as an inline box, so this very much used property display, and I want the inline box because that way we can ensure that the element doesn't force a line break, and so the number can be side by side with the text. So let's just check that out. Okay, great. So we have some distance here now, and so now let's continue formatting this. It's now a square and we want it to be a circle, and you probably remember how to do it. That's border radius 50%. And we can now define the height of that element, let's say 50 pixel, and the width. Of course, if we want it to be a circle, it has to be as high as it's wide. And inside of this box, the number should be centered. So text align center. So let's check this out. Alright, it's already circular. We will now increase the font size of this and give it some padding. So you see, this is now really designing in the browser. One thing that's also left to do is to make this text appear here on the side, and in order to do that we need to define a float property for that element. So some padding, as I said, I would say like 5 pixel, and then let's make it float to the left. So you see we have a whole lot of properties here for this little element. Another thing is the font size. Let's say 150%. Alright. Okay, this looks already quite good, right? Now what I would do now is to define some margin to the right here and maybe increase the size of those circles. So a margin to the left of 25 pixels, and then increase this here to, let's say, 54 or 55 actually. It doesn't really matter for 1 pixel. Okay, this is obviously margin to the right, not to the left. Okay, so this looks cool. Now we probably should add some more space between this and here the H2 element, because it doesn't look quite aligned right now. We want the phone to be more aligned with this text here. And so let's increase the margin for this box on the right side. So we already defined that there's a margin top 30, but we actually want this second box to have a larger margin. So let's say maybe 70 pixels. And so we can cut this and put it here. So the first one will have 30 and the second one will have 70 pixels. And so I don't need this one anymore. And alright. Great. And now one thing left to do is to format these buttons here. We want them, of course, to be the same size, and this one is way too big. So let's do that as well. We can just say, well, I better check the HTML because I don't remember exactly. Okay, so we have the button app, and now we want to style the image inside of the button app class. So button app img, and we want to set a height for them, let's say 50 pixels, so that they look the same. So the width is then defined automatically, of course, and let's say a margin between them. So I'll set a margin to the right side of 10 pixels. And let's check that out. Great, now they look quite similar. Now it's time to add some margin here so that these two are not so close to the text. We want them to be more like here at the bottom of the phone. So in order to do that, I will actually show you a new selector, because what I want to do here is to add a space to the last work steps. So I'll do that here, and I'll say works step, and then I say last of type. This is quite similar to last child, but so in order that you get to know last of type as well, I'll show you this too. So now I say that I want a larger margin here to the bottom, and in this case I will say 80 pixels instead of those 50. So the work steps all have 50 pixels, but now I say that the last one will have 80 pixels. Okay, right. For now this looks very good, don't you think so? But there is, however, a problem now, which is this. You see that even though we defined that a section should have 80% padding, there seems to be no padding here between this section and this one, right? And there is actually a good reason for that, and I will use the Chrome developer tools to show you that. So let's start by inspecting this element. And it's right here. So the section steps, which is the selected one, is the blue one, and we will see that the section starts right here. So the steps section starts where the meals section should start. And you actually see the green area is those 80 pixels padding, and it starts at a weird place, right? But there is actually a good reason for that, and it has to do with clearing the floats. Maybe you remember that from the introductory lectures, where I told you that when you define some floats, you then later have to clear those floats, and we didn't do any of those here. So the section meals actually has, as you can see up there, 0 pixels height, and that's because we didn't clear the floats. So we need to take care of that right now. And so we go back here, and yeah, the live preview was cancelled because, as I told you before, when you open the Google Chrome developer tools in this live window, then the connection gets lost. Now, clearing those floats, I will now show you a new class which is very used in web design and web development, and it's called the ClearFix class, and I will define it now. But don't worry about understanding exactly what I'm going to do here. We just use this class to clear the floats, and the actual clearing happens right here. So let me just complete this. So again, don't worry so much about understanding this. See, it's hidden. Okay, so what this class will do, it will clear the float after an element. So we will actually add this class here in the UL, and I will explain you why. This is because the child elements of this class, which are the li elements, are the ones who have the float property. And so we say that the parent has this ClearFix class, and then that float will be cleared right after the UL element. And we do that here and we do that here. And now that problem should be solved. So let's open up the connection again and close the old one. And here we are. So this works. Now we have our space here such as we want to. So we can confirm this. It's section meals. And now the section meals no longer has 0 pixels height, but it has its actual 546 pixels high. And everything works just right. So one last thing to do that I told you at the beginning of this lecture is to create a good way to separate between different sections. And what I want to do here is to add a very, very subtle background color to this section. So it's section steps and background color, and I will start with white. And so as I said, I want a very subtle effect here, so such as this one, and you will not notice it right now. The live connection was lost again, I don't know why. So this one is white, and this has a very subtle gray color, and you don't notice it so much now, but you will notice the difference once we design our next section, and it will have a great effect. So now we have 4 sections designed, and it's already starting to look very promising, I think. And so in the next lecture we're starting with our cities section. So feel free to review this lecture or to even ask some questions in the course forums if you have some. And then after that, see you in the next lecture.